Oh, and by the way, Kevin Keatts got fired. I actually have a hard time even calling it a firing when you're given, almost $7 million to go away. It's like, actually, they threw him a nice party. The Drive with Tim Donnelly, 99.9 The Fan. We do have a Monday sound-off coming up. It'll be a little bit different today because it's just an action-packed show, but if you have a take, be ready for when we call for it, 919-860-5326. Not right now, but be ready a little bit later on in this hour. NC State fired Kevin Keatts. I'm conflicted for a bunch of reasons. I'm going to give you the two-parter, right? I'm going to give you, and it's not even like an angel and a devil on your shoulder. It's not that. But there are two distinct differences when you look at this. One is you do feel for Kevin Keatts, okay? And I'm not saying like the results were better than you think, but, there are certain pillars of information that if they were to happen, you think your job would be safe. If you make it to the first Final Four in 4 decades for your program, you think you're going to get more than 10 months of job security. Took over a program under investigation, went through all that entails. Gave this generation of NC State fans one of their core sports memories that they'll have for the rest of their lives. Did not have the financial support necessary to achieve ACC title competition every year. Okay, there's just not the NIL support. There's not the staff support. There's not the structure to imagine yourself dancing at the top of the conference every single year. So I could see someone in Kevin Keatts' seat being quite bitter about how all of this broke down. And while I wouldn't say he's been vocally or his statement was super bitter and petty or anything else, I would say he's picked and choosed his times to make sure everybody know what he was dealing with. Back after the loss at UNC, he did bring up the lack of NIL funds. We have that audio.
The landscape has changed around us. And what I mean by that, if you went to the Final Four, you won the ACC, you could get any player, not any player, but most of the players you wanted because of that. But when you add the NIL part to it, none of that matters because you can flip a team just like that.
You could flip a team just like that. The NIL matters, and even in his parting statement, he pointed out that the resources and support need to be there. That's the one side. Then you have the other side, which is I completely understand this from NC State as a program's perspective. And part of it is having your own self-worth, knowing what you're worth, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing how good your program is, how storied your program is, and how a season like the one that just got put on the record is unacceptable. If you're NC State, the expectation is simply and should be that missing the ACC tournament is a fireable offense. Being one of the last 3 teams in the conference as it's structured right now, where it appears as if you'll have 3 teams in the NCAA tournament, 4 if something crazy happens in the ACC tournament. But when you are in a program, when you are in a basketball university like NC State, I think there are certain bottom lines that if you go below it, it's really hard to defend yourself if they want to move on, if they want to come up with the buyout, if they want to, essentially end your time leading the program. So to me, there's both sides of it. I don't fault anybody, right? The product on the court is one that State should be exceptionally mad about. Kevin Keatts probably is going, I've got reasons, not excuses, for why things went the way they are, like actual legitimate things that were holding back the program. And all of that, right, if we are not just problems people, we're solutions people, all of that should inform how NC State moves moving forward. If a season like that is unacceptable, if that is a fireable offense, then the next guy, and I don't care who you think it's going to be, Will Wade, a guy with an interesting history with the NCAA, but can coach on-court basketball.
From currently head coach at McNeese State.
Probably most famous for his time at LSU. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Ryan Odom, probably most famous for his UMBC upset of Virginia. Currently coaching at VCU. There you go, Virginia Commonwealth. Justin Gainey, an NC State alum who's now an assistant at Tennessee. Like whoever it is you think should be the guy, the way you just treated Kevin Keatts informs how that guy should approach your job. Okay, if I have a bad season, it's a fireable offense. Cool. You're NC State. You have 2 national championships. You have basketball history. Absolutely. That season is unacceptable. Here's my list of requirements to make that actually a possibility that it'll never happen again. I wouldn't take the job without the necessary support to win the ACC in writing. I'm not taking the job unless my contract says a certain amount of revenue share is promised every single year, a certain amount of financial support for from the institution for assistant coaching pool, for GM, for front office, for scouting, for things that make me a modern college basketball program. Because, I don't care what you think about Kevin Keatts at this point. The dude's fired. This season wasn't good enough. The players he brought in the transfer portal weren't good enough. Or the way they fit together wasn't good enough. That's it. But whether you think it's a good coach, bad coach, indifferent coach, he didn't get the support he needed either. Both can be true. So now moving forward, right, you have to look at your past results. You have to learn. You have to watch the film. You have to make corrections. The next coach, if they have to deal with all of the same hurdles that Kevin Keatts was dealing with, if he's a better coach, they'll do slightly better. If he's a more consistent coach, they'll be more consistent. But if your expectations are where NC State expectations should be, you need to give them more to work with. And I saw this on Twitter a couple days ago. I actually went searching for it today because I thought it was such a good point that I wanted to give attribution. It may have just been a fan on Twitter because I couldn't find it. The ACC is where it is right now, and NC State is where it is right now because they thought they didn't have to play the same game as the rest of college basketball. They thought all of that, oh, you got to scratch and claw and find all the money. Oh, you got to pay players this. Oh, that's for everybody else. We're the big bad basketball brand of ACC. They thought they didn't have to get involved in it. They do. They do. The fact that we're looking around the NCAA basketball world and UNC had to hire a GM just a couple of weeks ago. NC State still doesn't have a GM as of now, but you're looking at quote-unquote football schools. You're looking at quote-unquote mid-majors, and they do have a GM? That's absurd. But of course, we're these big bad basketball brands. We don't need that. Recruits will want to play for us for less money. We don't need to raise the money. We don't need to have the same. You do. You do. You do. You do. You absolutely do. Occasionally make a headline. Do something innovative. Be at the forefront. Because if not, again, is there upward mobility? Sure. There's just not upward mobility to where you want to go. Right? If NC State is like, hey, we got to make the ACC tournament every year, that's not high enough for their expectations. To make their own conference tournament every year?
Yeah.
Hey, we got to finish 9th or better. No. If you want to actively be competing at the top, you need to commit more. You need to raise more. You need to commit more. We're talking cash. And if you don't care, if you don't mind, if you don't want to make the necessary commitment, that's cool, but then you got to lower your expectations. You want to be a football school? You want all your NIL money? You want all of your revenue share to go to football? Fine, but then you got to lower your expectations for basketball. Sure, you might catch lightning in a bottle every now and then, but guess what's going to happen after those games? After those lightning in a bottle moments, your players are going to go cash in elsewhere, the ones with eligibility, and the ones that don't will become legendary mythic folk figures like DJ Burns and DJ Horn, and they'll watch the next year as those same heights aren't reached. That's where it is, that's where it stands, and that's where it's going to be until the dollars and cents tell you differently.